All right, the appendix: safety and underwater cutting and welding. Purpose: the appendix is intended with the cover the safety precaution file with the while preparing with the floor with the conducting underwater cutting and welding operation. All persons should be with the comprehend with the safety precaution list with the section safety summary contained with the front section manual of deviation with the established with any of the course potential dangers. However, the most serious aspect of the disregarding safety rules may not be the initial deviation, but tendency to treat other rules as casual. Remember, safety in the full-time job, the more safety of the conscious of each of the team members become, the safer each of the diving operation become. The detailed information chemical hazards encountered within salvage refer to the U.S. Navy ship, the salvage safety manual, which cover the toxic, explosive, corrosive, and other special nature perils. D2, underwater cutting and welding operations involve several hazards, including electrical currents, the oxygen, hydrogen-rich gas, which explode with the presence of the spark electrode, tip of the temperature of the south of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's impossible to anticipate all the possible situations that may arrive at the underwater cutting and welding operation. Consequently, it can be assumed that the safety operation conditions will simply blindly following the guidelines set forth for the manual with nothing else where the further knowledge of cutting and welding fundamentals can be within the use of the common sense with the sound judgment. The procedure described in this manual could be performed in the maximum safety. T3, explosive gases. Warning: do not attempt to speed the cutting of the creating of the fire to inferno deep inside of the metal with such a situation can lead to an explosion. Diver risk of the severe electrical shock warning with performing the cutting and welding operation while only partially immersed in the water. Heads in the splash zone, the most hazardous location for the diver can be placed. Never be in cutting the torch into the bell with the oxygen on or with the welding generator running. T31, general information: gas produced the underwater with the causing the rich of the oxygen, hydrogen will explode and trap the ignite of the gas under the water of the cutting will collect within closed compartment the open tubular structural member that open the piping system shape structural member that under such of the H beam with before cutting the mandatory provision for the made with the vacuum with the existing gas eliminate the possibility of the further gas treatment of the refer to the Navy ship the technical manual Navy C S9086CH STM 030 CH074 volume 3 for the detailed information of the gas ring engineering. If the presence of the trap explosive with the gas mixture is uncertain, it must be necessary for the drill holes in suitable location to allow the gas to escape. This will flow with the compartment with the seawater. Also, alternatively, with the purge of the compartment with the mixture of the gas will not support the combustion. 832, specific information. Underwater cutting and welding process to generate explosive gases. When cut, the power of the welding, the hydrogen and oxygen are disassociated with the water that will travel separate in the separate as bubble. The bubbles can collect with the trapped and confined space overhead. The hydrogen and oxygen, the gases combined, they will ignite and cover the popping sound. The oxygen cutting at about 60% efficient, resulting in approximately 40% of the pure oxygen being released into the environment. This gas can be entrapped above the working area that will be combined, and fuel such that the hydrocarbons can easily be ignited with the hydrogen bubble sparked and trapped in the bubble. Any pop of the sign with the explosive of the gas is collecting with above the underwater work area that is at the point when the cutting of the welding must stop the cut the investigated. Prior to the starting with any underwater cutting of the welding that is built with the drawing the physical configuration in the work area must be studied and determined in all areas of the void that can be contained or trap explosive gas. These areas were void, but there may be vented that may enter with the accordance with the Navy ship technical manual Navy C59086CH SCM 030 GH074 volume 3 to prevent possible explosions. Careful should be taken when the cutting of the welding and enclosure of the end are above the river beds, especially in the mud, because of the trapped methane gas the proper concentration can explode. The explosive gases may be produced by any one with a combination of the following: petroleum products such as gasoline, fuel, oil, or gases, greases, painting, mixing mediums such as linseed oil, and thinners, explosive adhesives, and solvent ammunition from the bulk, explosive decaying vegetable or animal matter, unburned gas for the from catching torch. Every precaution must be taken to prevent any underwater explosives, minimize the possibility of explosion with the trap gas. The proper following procedures are recommended: starting with the cutting of the highest point with the working down, working with the cutting through the material of the proper shifting of the from the outside of the work with around the circle with the drawing with the electrode every few seconds to allow the water to enter the cup with extremely high temperature that cannot build up inside of the metal of the brushing the stroke from the air action with the direction of the intent of the curve should be used. The grease gases may be developed with the surface with the vent bubble, the flexible hole, the secure then play with the front with the high point where the gases would collect in position above the water line. When working under sea chaff, the gas can be ventilated briefly, opening it by an internal valve of the method. 8.4 Electricity underwater. Warning: the AC power should not be used with underwater cutting and welding due to the extreme danger that involve the AC underwater current underwater. The electrical shock produced by the AC current prevents the voluntary relaxation of the muscle controlling the handle. Consequently, the diver may be unable to let go of his body with equipment that is and electrical circuit. Electrical water is incompatible with the nature of the use of electrical powered equipment. The underwater presence of the potential shock damage of both the diver and the tender when used with electrical powered equipment, such as the cutting and welding, underwater lighting. The diver and the tender for the must be produced with electrical shock of the personnel engaged with the underwater cutting and the welding should be thoroughly trained in the CPR first aid so that they can render immediately assistance for the event of the accident. But the result of the study conducted with the Navy revealed that the principal underwater electrical hazard facing divers engaged with the welding and cutting is not lethal electrical shock. Hazard exists for the diving wear and inadequate protective dresses in closely proximity to the relatively high-powered source of electricity. AC power was found to be posed a considerable greater threat than the DC. After the AC power will not be used for the underwater cutting of the welding. Electrical current above the shock level that passes through the human tissue is known as temporarily after the psychological function of the cell. The long-term effects, if any, of the unknown, much greater for the delay. Leaves can cause thermal burn. Severe shocks can be conceivable result of the respiratory cardiac arrest in the diver. The additional minor shock that may cause the loss of control, panic, injury due to the involuntary muscle contraction. Therefore, with the expansion of the tingling or initiation, unpleasant electrical shock should not be tolerated in underwater operations, even though no psychological physical damage may immediately be apparent. Physiological. All right, the safety rules listed in the following section may be followed to provide maximum permissible safety for the diver. G5, general precautions for the underwater cutting and welding. There are many conditions that contribute to the making of underwater work difficult. This includes the adverse conditions, currently unsuitable footing, poor visibility, low temperature, constant store for the danger of the coming for the falling and the rolling of the cutaway position. Especially true for the south with reckoning that this can be combined with the dangers involved with operating with electrical arc cable, producing fatal shock, severe burns with explosive gas pockets, creating a situation where the diver must be extremely alert. The following precautions must be observed with careful examination should be made before starting with the cut to learn how to cut away the pieces that will fall, whether there are any projections, wipes, or any other objects that may follow the line that cause a piece of the swing around the unexpected manner. Be extremely careful when the cutting of the tightly bound wire rope, the wire wrapped in ship propellers when served with a wire can backlash with a spring-like force. Before cutting, ensure the umbilical diving equipment will not be impacted with the flag of the cutting operation. D. Avoid cutting overhead, but the position sensitive to the falling of the molten material will seriously damage the diving the element and the dress umbilical. Never put down the carry iron electrical holder with the power is on. Never chamber the electrical wire then the power is on. The diver must never allow any of the body part of the equipment to come into contact with the groundwork if the safety switch is closed. Care should be taken when the diver carries large, loose metallic items arranged from the backpacks to ensure that no contact is made with the live electrode of the work. The DC power supply, the U for the underwater cutting the welding should be considered only approved for the electrical the welding machine should be tested for the proper working order prior to the U for the use only DC welding power. The electrical welding equipment should be installed by the company and experienced personnel with the according to the approved plan for the requirements, especially with the installation of primary power source for the outlets. Intent with the supply the power with the electrical welding machine with the equipment that should only be operated with according to the manufacturer recommended the operating procedure for the safety precautions outlined in this manual. Power supplies are covered in detailed Chapter 4. Following precautions are to be used and observed during the setting of the operation of the cutting of the welding and equipment to ensure the welding safety frame and the supporting the structure of the ground before starting operation. Ensure the need the terminal of the welding machine is to count with the short circuit to do the machine frame with before starting operation. Ensure that all the electrical connections are securely made before starting the operations. Stand on the dry wood, rubber matting, simpler insulating material than on-ground metal. Wear dry rubber and rubberized canvas gloves when they are good condition when they handle doing energized holders, torch capable of welding machines. Keep the welding machine communicators clean to prevent excessive flashing, and keep the welding machine clean and operable, free of oil and grease and electrical parts, free of the metallic parts that can cause short circuits. These 7 electrical holders and cutting torch. Following the electrical holder and cutting torch precautions, they should be observed. The only torch of the electrical holders have been specifically designed for the underwater application. They must have the capacity to handle the maximum rated current required for the electrical being used. Inspecting the apparatus to ensure that all the current with the capacity for the passing parts of the fully insulated with the non-conducting material. The material should be safely insulated against the maximum voltage and counted to the ground. Remember that no does not necessarily mean New does not necessarily mean ready for the use of the extra insulation may be required, which will provide the further driver protection and extend the life of the electrical holders. Standard holders designed for the service of the UV will not be used except for the exceptional situation referred in Appendix E. They inspect with the electrical holders, form the damaged part of the insulation material, the repair, replace any parts of the necessary flashback arresters, monolithic screens must be also when the proper work hour. Do not load the welding cutting torch before the ground clamp is securely worked in the near the work area. Before lowering the raising electrical holder ground cable to ensure that the current is off and the knife switch is open. Never attempt to chamber the tightening an electrode with the current on. Never hold the electrode points toward the body. This can be linked to the point of the load of the pistol as oneself. Or special care should be taken to avoid the touching of the metal part of the diving equipment with the electrode and uninsulated part of the electrode holder. Alright, never allow any of the metallic part of the diving dress or the torch of the work. 88 power cable to connect to the following power cable to connect. Safety precautions should be observed with all parts of the cable. The intent for the submerged shall be fully insulated with the water type, but they can be not overstated. Inspect the cable connection for the damaged insulation before starting the operation. And with a defect for the cable that must be repaired, but the can be able to replace before starting operation. All connections should be made with the tight and thoroughly with the insulated with the wrap of the rubber, the tape, with the applying with the layer of the Scotch coat, with the wrapping with the electrical tape. This will prevent the loss of the connection. Cables will produce the bubble during the operation. Should be reduced the bubble to indicate that the current is being lost through the porous insulation. Use only the welding cables minimum of two extra flexible with the exemption with the electrical holder. Will be the one lead is more flexible and will the driver the maneuver the electrical holder. Alright, all connections should be made with the type thoroughly and insulated, wrapping them with the, we're on, D. Usually only welding cables minimum with the 2 extra flexible exemption from the electrical holder with the minimum with 1 by 1 lead that's more flexible than will A with the maneuvering electrical holder. The cable must conform with the applicable requirements of military specification NC 915. Cables must be capable of handling maximum current requirements of the intended work. Do not use the excess length of the cable with a larger section over the shore deck. When working on the deep water, strain relief that should be provided across the connection to support the cable weight. When connecting length of the cable to the connection with the current carrying the capacity for the equivalent of the cable to being used, ensure that the one string of the lead between the electrical holder welding lead is defective free. The cable connection coupling with the singer of the 2 welded lead, but it should be thoroughly insulated with the layer of the Scotch cable and the wrap and rubber tape with the insulated with additional layer with the Scotch cable with the final wrap with electrical heat tape and heat shrink tape. This will afford the added protection for the diver. Warning: the position of the ground in relation to the diver must be such that at no time does the diver equipment become the ground and the electrode. The diver must avoid becoming part of the electrical circuit. Alright, secure the ground clamp at the clove of the work as tight as possible, preferably in the forward line of the vision. The diver must favor the ground with welding cut and a good drum. The rule of thumb is to never turn your back to the ground when your power is on. To keep the additional power cables as such for the underwater light cables and welding leads are separated. Caution: the AC power is required for the underwater lighting operation for the hand tools. The AC equipment must be protected with the ground fault detection device and a ground fault interpretation devices. Capable should be strung overhead if they are being run with long distance. If there is not protectable, there must be laid on deck. They must be protected with the range to prevent the interference with the safe passage of the personnel. When portable lighting is used, this should be clamped and fully secured within position, not handheld. The portable lighting power cords must be kept clear with the welding leads for the work area. The additional ground fault detector interpreter must incorporate within the circle. The cable to storage should be kept the drive free of the grease and oil, which may cause the premature breakdown of the insulation D9 safety switch. The positive acting without infusible current and interrupting switch of the relay of the horn and impulse must be welded. The circuit of the switch protected the drive with the breaking with electrical current. There should be stopping of the current supply with electrical hold. The type of the double pole safety switch set up with the figure in 4A. The safety switch, more often referred to as the knife switch, the most important safety item included with the underwater cutting of the water welding equipment. Inventory with the diver is fully isolated with the electrical circuit. With the knife switch is open. The tender of the phone toggle that should only be the instruct the clove of the switch when the electrode is poised for cutting or welding. Caution: it's extremely important that mounting the switch correctly. The switch must be positively acting, rigidly mounted, located so that it cannot accidentally knock or vibrate the clove. Should the switch fall and circuit would be broken. Alright, both double pole and single pole safety switches are authorized. However, the double pole is most often used because both are working. The ground leads are open and the closed simultaneously. The safety switches effectiveness of the following guidelines must be used. Using a single pole knife switch should be located with the welding lead side of the electrical circuit. They should be able to handle the maximum welding current. The safety switch is mounted with a vertically non-conductive wooden plastic, etc. switch with the head's open circuit potential with approximately 80 volts across the pole. To prevent accident of the safety switch should be fitted with a non-conducting slotted cover. When reverse polarity is required with the safety switch, which must be placed within the cutting of the welding lead side of the circuit. Never operate this knife switch in the combustible atmosphere. Knife switch must be in proper working order. Additional switch contact surfaces should be periodically checked with the vertius accumulation. The current should also be of the knife switch open at all times except for when they are posed or actual cutting of the welding. When single and pole knife switch is used, special care must be taken to ensure that the safety of the switch is not shown between the switch and the welding machine. Wetted, bruised, or worn cables can be shorted in the rubbing against the welding machine frame. The hatch Cummings and lying on the steel deck creating with a potential source of the danger. Inspect for the cable through the wrap of any questionable spot for the insulation from the rubber tape, followed by the additional layer of the electrical tape, and the heat shrink with a periodic inspection should be made to ensure that the insulation is not damaged. The safety switch should be located with such of the position enable the phone toggle to designate with the tender of the adverse operation of the switch during the entire time the driver is in water. The switch should not be clothed unless specifically directed with the diver to do so with the phone attacking Talker should be conform in each of the chamber to die for the value of the intercommunication system. D10, fire and explosion prevention. Warning, the hydrocarbons ignite almost spontaneously present for the oxygen, never to allow the oxygen carried component to come into contact with the oil and grease. D10-1, major cover. The major cover of the fire explosion are listed as flow of the combustible reached by the arc flying sparks, hot slag, mischief of the compressed gas, and cylinder short circuit, and if necessary for the following diving supervisor, be aware of the topside work being conducted with the vicinity of the diving station. Do not allow the welding and the cutting in the air where the combustible sparks and the slag can fly with up to 30 feet. Keep the equipment clean and operable, free of oil and grease and free of the metallic parts and electrical parts. This can cover the short of the circuit of the D11, the compressed gas is supplied. Oxygen, U, the oxygen are cutting profit. The gases are stored with a high pressure cylinder to deliver the reduce the rate with the V with the regulator with the cutting torch. One for the high pressure gas that they handle during the deriving operation. The oxygen is the most heavy, the true with the big cup with the lower with the ignition temperature of the flame of the greater accelerate for the combustion. The higher charge will ignite with the almost spontaneously impressive the oxygen. Oxygen fire creates intense heat with the flow of the paragraph that describes the precaution followed by the handling of the compressed gases. D11-1, using handling storage compressed gas. The necessity of the following of the precaution for the listed below cannot be stored or emphasized. D11-1-1, never lift. Never use the cylinder and contents other than the is intended use. Never use the cylinder, not even an empty one, as a roller or support. Never use a valve protection cap for the lifting cylinders. Never use a magnetic lifting. Never use the sling of the lifting. Use the cradle pallet with the proper cylinder perspective. Never use a hammer or wrench to open the cylinder valve. Never drop or allow any of the cylinders to fall, especially on the one that contains oxygen. Never temper with a safety plug, safety relief valve. Never connect the regulator cylinder containing the gas other than the for which the regulator was designed. Never under circumstances tap an electrical against the cylinder with any other pressure special strike and then arc with it creates a brittle area that can cause violent rupture when it can leave the rupture under the rough-loading, rough handling. D11-1-2, they always lift. They always open the cylinder valve to slowly allow the gradual pressure building up to prevent diesel effective line regulatory. Always keep the cylinders away from the hot work area, the hot sparks, the flags, flames, not reach them. Always store cylinders both fill and empty in a manner that prevents them from being knocked over. Always keep the valve protection cap in place for the hand type with except for when you've been connected for this use. Always clear the cylinder valve connection with any of the dirt and particle briefly opening, closing the valves before connecting the regulators. Do not stay on the direct line with the cylinder valve. When opening it, always purge the manifold within similar manifold before connecting the regulators. To loosen the change of the ruptured diaphragm, always ensure that the regulator adjusting screw is backed out all the way before the opening and bottle of the valve. Always remove the faulty regulator from serve the following system indicate the faulty regulator, external leaking, excessive creeping of the delivery pressure for the downstream valve closed, faulty gauge if the gauge opponent does not move off of the stop pin when the pressure is pressurized or does not return to the stop pin after the pressure is bled off. Additionally, follow the check the general leash must be observed. Check the identification tag with the proper gas. Avoid storing the cylinders in heavy area of the traffic areas such as near an exit of the gangways as vessels. Do not store cylinders in ventilated enclosures. Secure all cylinders that are not actually in the use of the designated storage tracks. Project the housing of the damaged U with the sharp edge of the spark from the flag of the open flame, and examine the hose with the regular leak of the wear loose in connection with the U with no ionic soap. Studs, proper leak of the liquid leak detector, ensure all the compressed gas cylinders are within a hydrostatic testing date. Prevent the set of the diaphragm. Always make sure for the back of the regulator adjusting screw out of it all the way before placing it into the storage. The deriving tender may be closed with the tension of the gas pressure chamber. The out of the cylinder when the cylinder pressure drops within 100 psi of the over bottom pressure. Which will prevent damage of the torsion and possible diver injury. All right, 11.1.3 general oxygen precautions. The following oxygen precautions must be absorbed. Avoid electrical circuit with the contact with the cylinder, include with the electrical wires, welding circuit that can produce the short circuit of the arc, that can lead to very serious accidents. Oxygen cylinders, valve, the regulators, hose, the fittings, and other apparatus should not be handled with the oil, the hands, with the gloves, and greasy material. Never allow the jet of the oxygen to strike any of the oil surface, the grease, the clothes, with any other fuel tank which contain with it has been contaminated with the fuel flammable substance. Never use it as suitable for the compressor air for the source of the pressure. Under no circumstances are air hoses to be used as an oxygen system of any kind. Do not store oxygen cylinders, gauges, fittings when they may be fouled with an oil or grease. Store or oxygen cylinders separately with separate fuels and gases. D11.1.4 General MAPP gas precaution. The MAPP colored gas is colorless, odorless combustible fuel. Like all fuel gases of the odorless nature, but the chemical has been added to aid the detecting leak of by smell. Like any other combustible materials, MAPP gas forms explosive mixtures within the air oxygen. The following precautions must be observed. During the setup of the point of the MAP gas valve outlet away from the oxygen cylinder before cracking to clear the valve connection. The MAP gas line may be purged. Do not permit the open line lights to other other door for the ignition visits any of the uncapped openings. Do not use the copper connection for the fitting of the map gas. There is slightly possible that the map gas reacts with the copper to produce excessively acetylides when the gas is under high pressure. Never use the match or flame leak detector non-ionic soap stuff with the proper liquid detector. Lighted cutting torch must be handled with care to prevent the flame with coming in contact with the driver. Dress the umbilical. The light torch should be not left to the unintended such of the position with the freest swing as possible foul lines. Lower the lighted map gas torch to the diver should be done only with a shallower depth in any location where it is absolutely certain that the flame can be kept clear of all the hoses, lines, and diver's umbilical dress. The light torch should never be lowered until the diver is ready for the watching for the 11-12 additional safety precautions. The following additional precautions must be observed. Caution: sparkless tools are made of alloy containing barium, which is extremely poisonous. Do not buff and seal the wire brush for the grinding tools containing barium. That is the action from the relief of the particles, dust, and vapor that may be injected to obtain with medical attention as soon as possible. Should cuts or ingestion occur with a considerable level of reddish and copper-colored tools are containing the barium unless they known that they otherwise such that the tools are not usually marked and that they contain barium, although they may be marked with a low mu mark. Only authorized equipment within the proper working order over all the equipment should be operated with the care in accordance with the manufacturer operating with the maintenance instruction and diver tender that should be assigned with the care and the control of the gas with unhindered with the quick action of the valve in case of emergency. Frequent inspection of the evidence and leak with the hose of the coupling valve of the stems and other parts of the equipment wall. The equipment is used especially confined in space. The failure to do so will result in the accumulation of explosive materials of the serious explosion hazards. Metal tools of even sparkless type. They should be used with caution to avoid making the spark. Such a spark can caused by the explosion. Proper mixture with the present. D12, personal safety diving. Diving draft. Extremely important with the diving the tower with the floor with the maximum protection allowed against the electrical shock of the eye and injury with the electrical arc. The U.S. Navy, the MK-12 surface-supported diving system affords the diver maximum protection provided the dress and the good for the condition. In addition, with the following guidelines are offered. The standard neoprene wet suit may be used with the provided in the good condition with the suit cellular with the structural intact of the suit must be free of the tears and holes and other defects which may impair the electrical insulation of the properties. Defect free of the rubber neoprene glove or other pair of the latex type of the surgical glove. They're recommended with the maximum protection. The glove gauntlets should be fully covered over the wrist. When performing the underwater cutting, the gauntlets should be secured with the right wrist over the prevent slag with the getting with the glove. The glove integrity with extreme important. With the proper welding shield must be fitted with the helmet. The electro arc cutting welding is to perform. The shield should be fitted with the appropriate welding lenses for the welding water conditions at all the work sites. The maximum protection against shock the diver support of the equipment of the electric arc underwater cutting welding should be completely insulated with the body, including the heads and hands and the feet. And D13, conclusion. The appendix has been presented with the general specific safety precautions dealing with the underwater cutting, the welding necessary for the support equipment. The rules are covered here and represent the minimum acceptable safety standards to be observed while engaged in underwater cutting and the welding operation. They aim to reduce the risk and associated with the use of the higher pressure gases, electricity, and underwater explosive gases. Periodic review of the appendix is encouraged. All right, and Appendix E is your exceptional situations, which I'm going to read tomorrow.